Hey there, so I just wanted to record a quick video demoing a project I've been working on called Slack to Stack. Pretty much Slack to Stack tries to bridge the gap between what's happening in ChatOps tools and identifying prime content for Stack Overflow for teams. So pretty much what it does is, as I mentioned, one, it quantifies the problem that Stack Overflow for Teams is trying to solve. So this is pretty much just identifying the quantity of questions asked offline in a ChatOps tool. The second is it actually identifies prompt content, including what types of questions should be asked, what type of articles should be written about, and also identifies possible tags for customers. And lastly, it does also uncover subject matter experts, so you know who to talk to populate the content for these tags or questions. But it is also important to remember what it is not. This tool is not a magic wand. It does require customers to interact with the tool and do some manual inspecting, and I'll jump into that and show you how that manual process will look like. And also, it does not talk to any of our products or infrastructure. So this tool really is something that a customer will have to download and run locally on their machine. As I walk through later, they also have to download their own Slack data, so that's why we wanted it to be something that they run locally and not something that we host, because we don't ever want to touch their Slack export data. So I will just jump quickly into the demo. So here's what the demo would look like after downloading Slack data. So the people who are able to download Slack data are admins and administrators and workplace admins. So this is usually through the IT department. That's how it was for me, so I had to go through IT to get that. And they can download one channel at a time. They can download any channel, but right now this is just looking at our team's reach and relevance talent channel. And that data pretty much just looks like, for every day there is a single JSON file with all the chat. So once they have the app open, they would just select all and open that. And then there on the background, there'll be some data processing. So out of these files, there were almost 60,000 messages. Out of those messages, it identified 14,000 eligible messages. So these are pretty much non-threads, non-notifications, non-bot messages. So pretty much just from users. And there is a process that it processes every message and determines if it is a question or not. There is some more logic in that, but pretty much at the cusp of it, it looks for different linguistic features, such as a question mark, the correct part of speech, so that's an auxiliary verb, and a verb has a correct vocabulary. So there's interrogative words, which is like who, what, when, where, how, and when, and it has the correct length though. So there's like pretty much a rule-based system to determine if a question or if a message is a question or not. So now that we know that there was 3,000 quality questions asked in this one channel over a given amount of time, we then go into clustering these questions. So the methodology behind clustering is pretty much to identify common topics of questions. Originally, I built this tool to try to identify duplicate questions. That's much harder than it sounds, but it did do really well at picking up on these clusters. So I have cherry-picked a few examples. This cluster right here is called Calculon Local Enum Help, and pretty much this cluster is all about Calculon, which is our local ad server. So we can see it talks about how do I set up Calculon to run locally, all these different questions about Calculon. So this would be a great first tag, and this gives us the starting ground to see what types of questions have been asked about Calculon. But it becomes really valuable when they actually download the data and bring it into Microsoft Excel. So if they pivot out the raw data, they can see the same cluster, and we can see that there's 32 questions in this cluster. And I actually went to our and I saw that there is 16 questions that are within Calculon. So if we expand this, we can actually see who is asking these questions. So these are actually Slack IDs from the question asker. I'm also working on how to extract the user IDs for anyone who is tagged in the question. But if we look at these high question askers, so we have this one with 5 questions, this person with 6 questions, this person with 7 questions, and we look at their profiles. They're all people who are actively working on Calculon and are the main stakeholders of it. So the assumption is if you're asking lots of questions, you are still a subject matter expert in that, but I'm also, as I mentioned, expanding it to include who's tagged in the question as well.